very much for taking the time out to speak to me this evening. I really appreciate it. You've given out some very interesting information through the alternative media, and I first wanted to find out a little bit about your background with regards to what you've done. What sort of attorney are you? Are you a federal attorney, or are you with the national bar or the state bar?
I'm admitted to practice in both New York and the District of Columbia, and I started out my career on Wall Street working on securities laws, but I always wanted to do international development. I'm a development lawyer, and I have a degree in development economics, like a PhD without thesis, that I got from the University of Amsterdam. I'm an American citizen, but during the Vietnam War, they said love it or leave it, and I didn't love the Vietnam War, and so I did leave, and that's what I did. I went to Amsterdam and studied development economics.
Oh wow, I actually live in Holland at the moment. I'm South African living in Holland, so I know what it's like to come here as a foreigner. Very interesting indeed. Okay.
I speak Dutch, you know.
Oh wow, that's interesting. My partner's Dutch. Ik spreek een klein beetje Nederlands, maar niet te goed. En you?
Ik vind het ontzettend leuk om Nederlands te praten. We kunnen een andere keer doorgaan.
Okay, well, this must be the reason why you've been speaking to all my Dutch colleagues here, Jan Oldencup and all of them. Did you do the interview in Dutch with them?
Yes, I did.
Wow, I'm impressed. That is impressive. I didn't actually check out his interview at all. I just know through our friends that he had spoken to him. But I'll definitely be posting that and passing it on. Okay, interesting. So you've
There's
had
another interview scheduled in Dutch in a couple of days, Tuesday next week.
So how many languages do you speak then?
Well, Dutch is actually the best foreign language I speak. I speak broken French, and I do have an interview in French as well.
Sure, okay. So you were at the World Bank then for 20 years?
That's right.
So what actually happened when they let you go? You were passed over a promotion. Just give us a little bit of a synopsis of what actually happened when your departure from them occurred.
Well, I had been interviewed for the job of general counsel. And during that interview, the executive search firm asked me why it was that there was a revolving door for general counsels. And I said it was because the World Bank was out of compliance on the capital markets. And if you're an executive search firm, you are obligated to bring the World Bank into compliance. So when I went to the U.S. Congress, I told them, before I was fired, I told them about this interview and the fact that the World Bank was out of compliance. And that was when it was, we're in a constitutional crisis, actually, as a result of this.
Okay. The
cover-up of corruption is, it turns out that the corruption that's being covered up is not internal to the World Bank. It is a constitutional crisis of the gravest proportions in the United States. And I stuck with the problem because I knew that there was going to be a currency war and a world war if this corruption was not resolved. And so the World Bank is a knowledge bank, and one of the things that I had guiding me was a very, very accurate, it's called a power transition model, which showed that there would be, all the countries of the world would cooperate and create a large coalition to fight this corruption, and that is exactly what has happened.
Okay, well, who are the gatekeepers to the World Bank? I mean, who really makes the decisions? And are they puppets for perhaps another manager higher up?
Well, that's what I've been finding out. I didn't realize what the corruption was at the time that I was fired. I had thought it was internal to the World Bank and that the problem would be resolved very quickly. That was in 2007, and I've just been finding out who the cutouts are. You know, the word cutout, that's like a slang for who's the facade for the corruption and who's behind it. And it's been like peeling an onion, you know, going from one layer to the other. And at each point, you think that you've resolved the corruption, and it turns out there's another layer. And I can tell you the layer I'm at, and I can also tell you that it is showing all of the characteristics of there being another layer.
Okay, what layer is that?
I'm dealing with the Jesuits in the Vatican.
Okay. Now, what would be the next layer after that?
That's a good question, and I can tell you that the way I work, it's not me. It's a coalition, and there are whistleblowers, and we all collect data, and we all work together to resolve, you know, to figure out what the corruption is. And I've learned that it's very difficult to find out when you're dealing with this kind of secret corruption. I can give you hypotheses, but I'm not comfortable doing that now, because what I've learned is that you've discredited the validity of the other information. So I can only tell you that I can tell you who I'm dealing with, I can tell you how we're dealing with this information, but I'm not comfortable telling you. It's like putting a jigsaw puzzle together. We haven't got it resolved on this layer. But I can tell you the Jesuits are really at the center of all of the other corruption that I have been dealing with.
Yeah, that's pretty much sort of the level that we have the understanding of. And again, it's that next layer that we all kind of putting the pieces together, because some of the options coming to us seem a little just too bizarre to be real. But there's just so many options that, we're finding out that the world is absolutely nothing like we thought it was, and that there's a lot happening that we just this Jesuit angle is particularly interesting and something I wanted to focus on with you.
I'm happy to do that.
Great. You've mentioned, I'd like to talk specifically about a few whistleblowers that I wanted to get your opinion on. Perhaps the OPPT movement and Heather Giraffe Tucci, do you reckon that she is connected to the Jesuits at all?
Yes, I absolutely do. I think she's a front for the Vatican.
Okay, and what information do you base that on?
I base it on this. Don't laugh.
No, go ahead.
A lot of disinformation, they're using the same graphics company. It's the texture of the videographers that she's using.
Okay.
They all hire the same companies. You'd think they would have figured out that that's a dead giveaway, but they haven't.
Yeah. Okay.
Also, because one of the other things that you learn is that people like to provide a diagnosis which is correct, but then the solution that they give you is absolutely disinformation and accomplishes nothing. Mm-hmm. So when Heather talks about the fact that people's identities are being misused for economic gain, this is absolutely correct. But she then has done things which don't resolve the problem whatsoever. And people are tricked into thinking that she's got a solution when she has just wasted their time, big time. She's taken them away from the real solutions.
Okay. What about perhaps Kevin Annett and the International Tribunal into Crimes of Church and State? They seem to have gone after the Vatican, or is that just another ruse of the Jesuits?
I'll tell you what they have done. They have allowed the International Court of Justice to set up a bogus system whereby the world's wealth is being diverted without people knowing where the money's going or how. I've asked for information, I wanted to know exactly what was going on. They didn't give me any of this information, because what I do is I just put it out there for everybody to see. I'm completely, I see my function as somebody who has discovered corruption, and I'm interested in providing this information to anybody who's interested in finding out what the corruption is, and we can all work together on a resolution with what I'm considering to be the coalition that I'm working with. It's a very loose coalition. It's not anything, where I can say this group is definitely there and this group is definitely there. What happens, for example, is I'll turn on my computer and, I just have a regular PC, and everybody and their uncle seems to have a back door into my computer. And so I turn on my computer and it jumps around, and then there's a document that I had worked on years ago that I forgot the existence of that's very, very useful. Some people think I have a very good filing system. I don't. What I have is I have put all of this information out there, and if you go on my website, you will see exactly what I have done at any given time. You'll see a chronology that shows how many years I've been working on this problem. In any event, I'm sharing information, and that's what I'm doing so that we can all work together. That's all I'm doing. And if any, and one of the other things people say is how improbable it is that I would still be working on this problem, that I'm not that I haven't been somehow shunted aside or discredited or imprisoned or whatever, that something terrible hasn't happened to me. And it's very simple. It's because there is nothing that I am doing that's different than anything anybody else would do. I'm just right there pitching alongside everybody else. There's nothing magic about what I'm doing, except that I am sharing all of that information. There is, on any given day, there is nothing that I know that other people don't know, except, when we were talking about what's the problem now with the Jesuits, who's behind the Jesuits. I'm uncomfortable. There are people that I'm working with on this problem, but I'm uncomfortable because I don't really know what's going on. I'm uncomfortable in putting this out there because you sound like you don't know what you're doing, because I'm really not sure of it. We're all trying to solve this thing together.
Yes, indeed. Karen, I'd like if you would please explain to us the mechanics of the collateral accounts and what would happen if we release them, and what is likely to happen if there was a currency reset stroke reevaluation.
That is the question that I'm currently that's really in front of everybody right now. There's what the collateral account is, for people who don't know what it is that over the centuries, starting with colonialism, there has been a great deal of wealth generated. Just think of all of the gold that the conquistadors gathered from their colonies. And this wealth has all been centralized. It was put into the Vatican at a certain point, and a great deal of interest was generated on this wealth. And it's been concentrated and further concentrated. And then during World War II, just, think about where all of the war was being fought. The elites that had all of this gold, the Vatican or the American army would go to these elites, or in one case it was Yamashita, who was royalty. He was sired by the brother of Queen Victoria, who went to the Philippines because he was autistic or something, and the court didn't think he would make a good king, so they sent him packing to the Philippines, and then he went around the world siring illegitimate children. And one of the children who he sired was this Japanese general named Yamashita. And Yamashita went around the world warning everybody that with the terrible World War II, their gold was going to be captured. And so he would take their gold, he would give them bonds, denominated in the billions of dollars with interest on it. Anyway, all of this gold was concentrated. A lot of it was buried in the Philippines. Some of it ended up in Indonesia. But then, after the war, a lot of it was taken out and put in bank accounts all over the world. And there is a German, how to describe him? I call him a lawyer because he's got legal expertise, but he's actually a banker. And he has very accurate information about where all of this gold is deposited. Some of it is still buried, actually. But a lot of it is on deposit. And he has this signatory authority because of the court cases in the Philippines. And so this gold, and it's also gems, it's also statues, it's the world's wealth that has been concentrated, and it is available for the benefit of humanity. And what has to happen is that this wealth has got to be placed at the disposal for the benefit of humanity. And humanity has got to transparently decide what is for the benefit of humanity. So getting back to the question that you had about Kevin Annett, I'm not saying that he didn't have an important case about what happened to the indigenous children in Canada. It's just that case was used as an excuse by the International Court of Justice to give the authority for all kinds of projects supposedly for the benefit of humanity. But humanity doesn't know anything about these projects and whether it's truly for their benefit or not. And when I went to Hendo Henderson, I asked Hendo Henderson to let me see what these are, and the answer I got was, would you like to prepare a project? I said no. As a matter of fact, I don't. But I don't think that it's for the benefit of humanity if humanity doesn't know anything about it. You know, there has got to be transparency. This is all being done in secrecy, and that just doesn't work. So, what has to happen? I can tell you, you know, if you'd like to know where the deposits are, but I'll talk about two deposits in particular.
Yeah, if you would please, Karen, tell us.
Okay. One deposit is 170,500 metric tons of gold, which is in the Bank of Hawaii. There's another deposit, which is 12,000 metric tons, and that's in the Bank of Tokyo. And I can tell you where some of the other deposits are if you'd like.
Yes,
would you like
please.
to hear that? Okay, it'll just take me a half second to get it up here. I mean, it's 4 times what people think is the amount of gold that is above Earth. You know, it takes a long time to mine gold, but we've been mining gold for a very long time. Yeah. And there's a lot more than people give credit for. Okay, there's 130,500 metric tons in Amex Hong Kong. There's 150,000 metric tons in Development Bank of Singapore. That's a total of 451,000 metric tons. There's another 100,000 metric tons in other American banks, and there's also 172,000 metric tons of gold that has been reburied in the Philippines. Okay? So, now all of this gold is in one, what you call a trust account, which is, that's an account, it's all been accumulated in one account, and then there are sub-accounts in these different places that I was telling you about. And I know who has the signature authority because he's the one that has been, you know, has all the documentation. He knows the bank accounts.
Okay, now who would that be?
His name is Wolfgang Struck. And he is, as I said, he's a banker who lives in the Philippines. And he contacted me, and we've, you know, I think it's been just about a year that we've been in touch. And he showed me his documentation, and he showed me the court cases.
So what is it going to take for him to sign this back over to humanity to get some of this money out to those people on the ground who are starving?
He has already agreed that the 170,500 metric tons should go to back U.S. dollars. But the banks, you know, the Bank of Hawaii, where it is in their vaults, refuses to recognize his authority. They're refusing to do this.
Okay.
Illegally.
So what are you suggesting?
Well, that is the problem. That's why it's so important to be having this public information. Because the people in the United States need to know about this.
Yes, definitely.
Because there are obviously people who are benefiting from the fact that these banks are refusing to do what they're required to do.
There was apparently $10 billion that were put through the World Bank that has somehow just seemed to have gone missing. I was wondering if you knew anything about it.
No, I don't. See, the thing is, I'm not allowed into the World Bank premises illegally. I was reinstated by the 188 ministers of finance. Because in addition, see, I worked in the World Bank legal department for 20 years, and then I was fired illegally in 2007. And, you know, I stayed in touch with all of the various authorities. And then in 2009, the board tried to reinstate me, and I was locked out of the building. And so I bought a World Bank bond, which makes me a bondholder entitled to accurate financial information. And I advised the board that they should ask for a special audit of the World Bank financials, something called internal control over financial reporting. So the board hired KPMG, and not only am I suing the World Bank, but I'm also suing KPMG. And that lawsuit was settled by the board, and they reinstated me. And when I went to go into the building, there was, you know, there were a number of, what can I say, that the firm that provides security for the World Bank is called Allied Barton, and they're owned by the corrupt group that is refusing to turn over the world's gold,
Very interesting.
according to the signature authority. And I can tell you who that group is. There's a very, very good study that was done by the Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich, Switzerland. 3 mathematicians took accurate data on who owns the 43,000 multinational companies. And it turns out that there's a group that has secretly grabbed control. They have 40% of the assets of these 43,000 companies, and they have 60% of their earnings. Although it looks like these are separate companies, what they've done is they've taken the same directors and they put them on the boards. That's called interlocking directors. Yep. And so the mathematicians who have modeled this call it a super entity. Other people refer to it as the cabal. But in any event, this group thinks it's above the law and they've also grabbed up all the media companies, the Hollywood producers, the newspapers, the television shows. And so anybody that is reporting this corruption will not get past first base. So many people who just are limited to those news sources are just clueless about what's really going on. But it turns out that because this group is not reporting things that are really happening, they've lost the confidence of the public. And I think now 70% of the American public no longer trusts their mainstream media. They call it all kinds of things, lane media, that kind of thing.
Wow. So that high, 70%.
We didn't have the war in Syria because people had already been lied to on weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and they knew that they were being lied to about the chemical warfare in Syria. So they didn't allow the bombing to happen. And of course, this also happened first in the UK Parliament, where the UK Parliament refused to authorize attacks on Syria. But the Parliament in the UK, I have gotten 3 statements on the Parliament website, and there's a whistleblower from Scotland named Elaine Colville, and in July, the 2 of us got a joint statement up in the there's a select committee on public administration, and they were doing an investigation into the complaints procedure, and they wanted to know how the complaints procedure was working. And I said, well, the complaints procedure is not working because I've already testified twice to the UK Parliament, and you haven't followed up on it. And what Elaine said, she's gone to the Ombudsman and the Prime Minister and etc., reporting all of this corruption. And she said, the Parliament is not doing its job in policing this corruption. There's no follow-up on complaints. So, that's where it is. It's clearly out there. And one of the very hopeful things is that the World Bank is a knowledge bank, and there's a very accurate what they call a power transition model. It uses the political science modeling tools to try to figure out whether this corruption can be tackled. And it has been predicting ever since I got my statement in the UK Parliament and the European Parliament websites that there will be rule of law. And, we've just been watching as this coalition builds and gains traction, which is where we are.
Okay. All right. Can you explain to me where someone like Neil Keenan then plays into all of this?
Well, let me tell you what's currently happening there.
Yeah, please.
He has threatened to sue me.
Really?
And I have said that since he's threatened to sue me, I obviously am not going to say anything that's going to allow him to sue me. I'm not going to publish anything that's going to allow him to sue me. And then at a certain point he said, okay, Karen, I'm not going to sue you. He sent me an email like that. And so I said, look, Neil, I need this in writing. I need an enforceable indemnity agreement, or I obviously am not going to say anything that I can be sued about. So that's all I had to say on Neil Keenan.
Okay, so I read between the lines there and I'll say nothing further. Okay.
Well, I mean, I don't really want to be sued by Neil Keenan and his lawyers, so I'm not going to say anything else.
Fair enough.
Say what you want. You can be sued
No thanks, no thanks. I know who backs Neil Keenan, and I'm not too keen to dally with those guys. I was wondering if you'd perhaps share with me your thoughts on where Benjamin Fulford and the White Dragon Society fit into all of this.
Okay, let me tell you what happened with my last interaction with Benjamin. Okay? He called me one night around 11 o'clock. I looked kind of, what can I say? It was 11 o'clock, and, so I clicked on my Skype, and the next thing I knew, at the end of our conversation, which, by the way, he asked me some questions about Neil Keenan. So at the end of our conversation, I looked and I saw, you know how you have these message capabilities? I looked and I saw that at the very beginning of our conversation, he had sent me a message saying this thing is being taped. But I hadn't seen it. I hadn't clicked on it. I didn't know it. And I saw that and I said, you know, Benjamin, I had no idea that you were taping this. I certainly wouldn't have, I would have put my backdrop up. We were talking a little bit about this backdrop I have to make myself look like I have a nice office as opposed to, the papers lying around. Anyway, so then I said, okay, Benjamin, what's going to happen is you're going to edit out the statements that I made on Neil Keenan, and you're going to get him to agree that this thing can be published, or I'm not going to agree, because I don't want to be, if you're sued for, as a lawyer, I know what the ingredients are for slander, and there has to be publication. And I said, no, Benjamin, there's not going to be any publication here, because I'm not consenting to it. So the last thing I knew, somebody on my Facebook page showed me that Benjamin had been selling this tape that he made that I didn't consent to the publication for $8. Anybody who wanted to buy it. So I went back to Benjamin. I said, Benjamin, this is not inspiring a great deal of trust. So that's all I had to say on Benjamin.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, reading between the lines there too. I'll take that as well for what it's worth. Right. Let's talk about the global collateral accounts. There's a lot of talk about the entity known as Swiss Indo. I was wondering if you could comment on that, please.
All right. I think that is misinformation on the part of the Vatican. You'll see all kinds of these glossy films, and all of the figures have 3 and 4 zeros, or 5 or 6 zeros on the end of them. And then you read about, all kinds of improbable things. And look, this may all very well be true, but I have no independent information on it. And, I was having another interview with another journalist, and they asked me the same question, and then they were kind enough to publish the interview, and then the very next day they went back and they said, obviously if Karen knew anything, she would have more information on Swiss Indo. I can tell you, I do not. As I said, there's a group of whistleblowers that are trying to get their information about what's going on with the Jesuits, who are definitely behind all of this corruption. And what the other layers are behind that, we're all working together to sort that through. Okay. So I don't have any better information than anybody else, but all I can say is that we are all trying to figure out which end is up there. And you can say, well, the fact that I don't know better than anyone else, I'm just grappling with these issues along with everybody else. But I can tell you that there is a coalition of people who are fighting this corruption and fighting this control, and we will get ourselves sorted out on what else is behind the Vatican.
Oh, I hope so. I really do. Knowing all that you know, or the information that you have, what is it that you reckon we need to do next?
Okay. I'm an economist in addition to being a lawyer, and for most of my career, I was spending my professional lifetime as a lawyer. But I am now spending a lot more getting myself up to speed on the economics of monetary monetary economics. And there are specialists on currency and specialists on gold. One of these people is Antal Fekete, who is talking about how limited the time is for us to get ourselves sorted out before we run into a currency crash, a collapse, because we are dealing with paper currency. And this is always unstable. It has no value behind it. What you have is you have the Federal Reserve for the United States, who has been issuing what they call quantitative easing. That's a funny word for printing press dollars. And this is not inspiring a great deal of confidence, especially because the U.S. dollar up until now has been the international reserve currency until the BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, have stated that they are no longer going to denominate their international trade in dollars, and that's 25% of international trade. This means that the demand for dollars is going down, whereas the printing presses are churning out more and more dollars. And currency is like anything else, it's supply and demand. So in the last few months, what's happened is that the Treasury Department is buying the dollars that the Federal Reserve is churning out. This is, you can't just keep going indefinitely in this kind of a trajectory. You don't have to be a monetary genius to see that this is not working. So we have a limited period of time in which to figure out which end is up. And I can tell you what the Jesuits had in mind, and it's a non-starter. They wanted to have a single world currency. This is not happening. Nobody wants a single world currency. Nobody elected the Jesuits to run the world. They may have thought that they could do this secretly with the Knights of Malta and all of the secret societies they have, the Bilderbergers and the Trilateral Commission, and every time you turn around, there's another secret society that thinks they have the right behind the scenes to pull all the strings and to corrupt all the politicians. Well, this is, it's not happening behind the scenes anymore. This is all being made perfectly clear out in front. There's this author at the turn of the century, Baum. He's the one who wrote The Wizard of Oz. And the yellow brick road, that's supposed to be gold. And the wizard, that's the bankers that are issuing all this paper currency. And Toto, the dog, that's the whistleblowers. What we've done is we've pulled that screen open, and people see that the wizard is really a little old man turning wheels and making a very scary projection screen. And the world is looking at the difference between the projection screen, which is the mainstream media, and the little wizard. And they're not so frightened anymore, although there are some real things to be frightened of. I can talk about some of the false flags that we have disrupted. I can talk about, for example, how there was a nuclear device which went off 600 miles off the coast of South Carolina. It was meant to land on Charleston so that there could be another terrible, catastrophe, and people would be out in the streets, and then they could clamp down with martial law. Well, that didn't happen. Syria didn't happen. At a certain point, there was a directive for all of the members of Congress to get on four military aircraft, and fly to Florida for the funeral of a congressman. Well, no, we found about that, and we sent an email to the congressman, and we said, it wouldn't be such a smart thing to get on that military aircraft. The planes might crash, they may land in Guantanamo Bay, they may land in a prison, and all the Congress members have to go to jail, except for the ones that might have been doing something. So there's been one false flag after another. There was then this drill on power, where there was a threat that there might be an interruption in power. And at that point, I've been in touch with something called the Council of Governors. This is 10 governors. Martin O'Malley is one of the co-chairs. He's the governor of Maryland. Then there's Terry Branstad, who is the governor of Iowa. He's the other co-chair. And one of the other governors on this council is Jack Markell from Delaware. He's the president of the National Association of Governors. Anyway, I've been in touch with these people. The Assistant Secretary of Defense, Peter Verga, who's the liaison to the Department of Homeland Security, is also involved with this Council of Governors. I said, this council is supposed to be maintaining electricity to the citizenry. It's not supposed to be panicking the citizenry. So the thing is, all of these false flags, people have gotten, used to this kind of treatment by their, these corrupt officials, and so it's not happening the way it was scripted.
Okay. Yeah. I'm so glad to hear that at least some of them are being scuppered, and we're not having the full attack of all of these false flag operations. Do you think that we're actually moving into a time now, Karen, where let's say we're going to be winning. We never want to win a war. No one really wins a war. But are we actually moving into a time where we're going to see poverty lifting? We're going to see the funds redistributed to those who are at the, most suffering end?
Well, I can tell you that we have this coalition. How do I know we have this coalition? I'll give you a for instance. Okay, I'm dealing with this power transition model, which predicted back in 2004 that if we were able to get one country that believed that there was going to be rule of law, we would have rule of law. And so in 2007, which is when I was fired, I went to the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations. I went to Senator Lugar. I wasn't that happy about being fired illegally. And I said, the United States is losing its credibility, and this very accurate model is predicting that the U.S. is going to lose its ability to handpick the president of the World Bank. That's something called the Gentleman's Agreement. It was in place for 66 years. And I said, unless we can explain to the American public that there's this corruption going on, we're going to lose the Gentleman's Agreement. And that is what happened in 2010. The 188 countries that own the World Bank said we're not going to just allow the United States to handpick the president of the World Bank. Now, it's true that the current president, Dr. Jim Kim, is from the United States, but he was vetted, and he had to compete with two other candidates. So the Gentleman's Agreement ended. And I had in 2008, I had said to then Senator Chuck Hagel about this model, and I said, we're going to lose NATO. We're going to have a currency war if we don't fight this corruption. And of course, at that time, I didn't know that I was talking about the Federal Reserve System and the Vatican. It's only later that I was able to discover what this corruption was, and the fact that the Jesuits have bought all of these companies that are traded on the capital markets. But in any event, this model, once I started to get, and other whistleblowers started to get information on the UK Parliament website, it started predicting with 90 to 95% accuracy that we would have rule of law. When I got my statement up on the UK Parliament website. Actually, what happened was in 2010, I went to the Serious Fraud Office, and they called up the Securities and Exchange Commission. And of course, this group, the Federal Reserve, which owns all of these companies, they're doing all kinds of insider trading. People that are in the capital markets, they're getting the leftovers after the Fed has finished doing their insider trading and made all these manipulations. And the question that I didn't actually finish answering, there's all kinds of manipulation into the gold price. And what happened in July is that we stopped being able to lease gold. The central banks would do this because that's something that helps them earn money on their gold that they have. But in July, the currencies started to, people started to lose confidence in the currencies. And so it was no longer possible to lease gold anymore. And that's, that's what's happening. The SEC is just sitting there. They're not punishing the insider trading of this cabal, of this super entity that we've been talking about.
Okay. Just one last question I wanted to ask you. So the Jesuits control everything. What is the ultimate aim? They've got all the money they'll ever need, and they've got all the power. Why do they continue to do it if it is a losing game?
Well, just think about pigs at the trough. They want to continue to eat just as long as they possibly can, yes?
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Makes perfect sense. Didn't think it was that simple. I was wondering...
But as I was going to say, the coalition to end this corruption is very, very much there. So, for example, Russia Today TV, I've been on their broadcast 3 times. The German government, they're clearly not going to continue to accept this corruption. So they're part of the coalition, and then the BRICS countries. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. So the power of the countries that are not going along with this this corrupt cabal, it's just they're more powerful than the Jesuits, and they're all pulling together. And the citizens of these countries, like in the United States, they understand what's going on, and they're not going to stand back and allow this to continue. That's all. And it's just not going to continue.
That's very optimistic. And your outlook for the future then is what? How do you foresee it rolling out? Do we have a new financial system coming into play that's gold-backed?
Well, I'll tell you where we are on this. When you say gold-backed, not entirely, no, because the idea is not that you have what you call legal tender. What right do people have to prevent other people from using the currency that they want? And the most important currency, actually, is the local currency. Things like time banks. That will create very full employment. Who's to prevent people in a jurisdiction from trading among themselves with their time? And that's exactly what prevents it is the fact that it's not legal tender. Well, you can have states recognizing the precious metals as legal tender, certainly, and there's going to have to be a transition because the approach up until now has been that you have a right to prevent other people from using currency, from declaring what's legal and what's illegal. We have to end this practice. It's simply there so that the power-hungry cabal, Vatican, Jesuits, can exert influence and control and dominate. We don't want that. So we've got to end that practice. We've got to educate people that this is not something that they find acceptable. I mean, there's all kinds of nefarious things that have been going on where people's tax money has all been going to the Vatican, 60% of it in the United States, and 40% has gone to the UK. Now, this is not good. Somebody sent me an article that showed that Bill Clinton had pledged all of the people in the United States and all of the land to secure the debt. Now, that's not acceptable. So what has to happen is that all of the people that aren't aware of this, they've got to become aware of it. And then we've got to fashion a system going forward where that's not going to be possible again. And it's certainly, you can say, well, it's not going to happen without a huge war. Of course it's going to happen without a huge war. Why do we have to have a war? It's just very obvious what these people have been doing, and we're not going to stand for it any longer. And we're going to do it differently. And how long is it going to take us? I hope that we can get our act together before the currency crashes. We certainly should be able to. We know where that gold is. It ought to back our currency. But when when you say, is it going to be only gold backed? No, absolutely not. Any country that has a commodity that's valuable should be allowed to use that commodity. Bananas in, which is it, Ecuador? I mean, we have got to all work together to come up with a system that makes perfect sense. And we're not going to get it right off the bat. But one of the things that I think has to happen is that whistleblowers have got to be protected so that everybody knows what's going on. And we never get into one of these, contests where secret societies are revered as worthy. They're not worthy. That's the wrong way to do anything. We don't like that. We need to have transparency, and people need to get themselves up to speed, and they need to learn how to be critical thinkers. And there's all kinds of technology that people are learning about to try to prevent people and frighten people from learning about what's going on. There's all kinds of additives that's supposed to weaken people. Well, we've got to get to the bottom of this and prevent it. Obviously, there are enough of us here that know what's going on, and we're educating the rest of us, and we're all going to work together to get things back on track where they need to be. And they haven't been where they need to be for the longest time, because this Jesuit control system has been in place for the longest time, and it's got to really end.
Yes, indeed. Just one quick thing you touched on there before we go. You said that Bill Clinton obviously used all the people and the land to secure the United States debt. So you're obviously in full awareness of the fact that we as individuals are used as collateral. We have value, and our birth certificates are in fact stock certificates that are traded. Do you know?
That's right.
Okay, so you can confirm that from your knowledge.
That's correct.
Okay, brilliant. Well, there's a lot of very interesting people I'd like to connect you with as well. I work with a very unique think tank of individuals who are uniquely focused on creating a better world. So if I can take that opportunity to do that at some point, I'd really like to. They'd like to speak to you more and offer you some information. I think perhaps it might be valuable to you as well. You can take it or leave it, but I think you might be interested in what they have to say.
Oh, I would love that, Mel. Really, I think all of us just have got to work together, and we are working together.
Oh, brilliant, Karen. That's awesome, and I look forward to that. Well, I guess I'll end the interview there, and I thank you very much for your time, and hope we can chat again soon.
Yes, and in Dutch.
Yes, you know, I've lived here for 5 years, and I'm actually South African, so I speak Afrikaans. And Dutch and Afrikaans are so similar that I've struggled to pick up Dutch because I speak Afrikaans. And when you talk Afrikaans to people here, they look at you like you're funny because it's 17th century Dutch. So I've lost my confidence in actually learning to speak proper Dutch, because I was, in one way, and I know it's very sad, I've kind of become afraid of being detribalized of my Afrikaner heritage. Very proud of my sort of African heritage. So that's the kind of excuse I have for not being fluent in Dutch, despite being married to a Dutchman for 12 years.
Ik vind het geweldig om en Afrikaans en Nederlands te praten. Dus gaan we zo door.
Ja, ik zal proberen om te leren, maar ik ken niet te veel Nederlands, maar ik wil meer Nederlands kennen.
that is perfect.
Yeah, there we go, we're getting there. I tell you what, next time we do an interview, maybe my partner can interview you, he can do it in Dutch.
Nee, jij moet het doen.
Ik moet het doen. Oh, you got the accent down perfect. My word. All right, Karen, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy to speak to you. Thank you for everything you're doing. And you know what? We need people like you out there just standing up and speaking the truth. And it's good to know that there are still good people working within these organizations, and we need to offer them our support so that they feel confident enough to come out and say what they need to say. Because I'm sure you know plenty of people working in the World Bank who are genuinely good people who could certainly shed a lot of light on what's going on.
Oh, I'll tell you, Mel, the whistleblowers that I've been working with are just the most phenomenal people, and we're just all going to go back in and we're going to just take over that place.
Oh, can't wait. Look forward to that day. Anyway, I'm going to end this for this evening. Thank you very much for your time. We'll catch up soon.
Yes.
Brilliant. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.